Penn State on upset alert? I think so. Zach Seyko locked on Nittany Lions. I'm picking USC to win this football game, Zach. Not because I think USC is great. Not because I think Penn State is terrible. But part of my reasoning is legitimately, call me insane, the madness that is college football and the illogical nature of a lot of picks. On paper, there's no reason Penn State should lose this game. USC has struggled to stop the run. Penn State loves to run the football. Penn State's front four has looked good to me this year. USC's offensive line, not so great. But I pick USC for these two reasons. Number one, long trip. Long trip, it is hard to go across country and win a football game. It's different when you go play a Rose Bowl because you're there for the entire week. You're going there on a relatively short turnaround to play the football game. That's reason number one. And reason number two, I think the Minnesota loss kicks USC back into high gear the way the Kentucky loss kicked Ole Miss into high gear. Am I nuts?
No, I don't think at all. I think there's good reason to pick USC for those points. USC doesn't have to travel. They wait for Penn State to go to them, right, in the LA Coliseum. USC kind of showed what happens when another Big Ten team goes to the Coliseum. Of course, Wisconsin's not to the caliber of Penn State, but it was 21-10 at half, and then the second half it was 28-0. Spencer, I disagree with you. I think Penn State is good enough to overcome that because I brought up those points as well. It's not that Penn State doesn't know that USC's backs are against the wall. I agree. They're going to put in plays. There's going to be a little bit of desperation because I don't know that a 9-3 USC team, even if they win all the way out, I don't know if a 9-3 USC team makes the college playoff inside of that top 11, not the top 12, top 11 because they don't get that 12th spot. So I understand where USC is playing from, but Penn State's not just going to say, okay, well, because their backs are against the wall, we're going to let them play that way. We're going to let them play aggressively. No, Penn State has everything in front of them. They still have the expectation that this is a must-win game. It's not just a must-win game for USC. This is a must-win game for Penn State because if they lose now to an unranked team, then you got to go and save your season somewhere else. And do you really want to do that? Would you rather go all in on trying to win this game against USC or go all in against winning against my national championship pick in the Ohio State Buckeyes? So Penn State's kind of been in a similar situation where both teams need to go all in to get an all too important victory at this point in the season.
Yeah, I think 10-2 for any Big Ten team likely gets you into the playoff. Look out, Indiana.
Well, it should.
And I'm not even kidding when I say look out for Indiana because that could be a 10-2 team by the end of the year. I'm just saying.
Yep.
Just saying if they anyway. We'll get to the Hoosiers on another day, but I don't know that I agree with your characterization that it's all on the line here for Penn State as much as it is for USC. The Trojans just got upset by a Big Ten team that is not going to win more than 7 games this season. Like maybe 8, but like Minnesota, like they're okay. Penn State, if they lose this game, they could lose to Ohio State, and I think they can win the rest of their games pretty easily. I mean, Washington has to go all the way across the country. Like who else do you think trips up the Nittany Lions and could put them to 9-3 if they do lose to Ohio State? A game, might I add, they play at home.
Well, it's not really that, Spencer. It's the fact that Penn State has the goals bigger than, well, let's just get 10-2 and let the committee decide this. No, they want to get as close. They want to get out of the conversation to the point where it's not up to a room full of people that say, hey, this is what we think of this Penn State football team. They don't want to leave it up to outside judgment. So if you go 11-1, that lone loss against Ohio State, and then put yourself in the Big Ten championship conversation where it could be a hypothetical rematch of Ohio State and Penn State, right? That's Penn State's goal. Penn State's goal isn't here like, okay, we can drop a couple of games here, but we'll be safe because it was USC and Ohio State. Again, USC is unranked currently. Okay, I imagine that 10-2 gets you into, but I don't think Penn State's too keen on, well, we're the 10 seed and we're okay with going on the road to wherever for a playoff game. They want to go to 11-1. They want to control their own fate, and that's how they look at it. So, yes, going all in against USC absolutely makes sense to me. But I agree with so when I look at USC, this team is better than people are giving them credit for. I think the travel certainly helps USC's cause, but they deserve to lose those games against Michigan and Minnesota. But if they got lucky, who's to say this wasn't a 5-0 team and this was a top 10 matchup between Penn State and USC? If the ball bounces a couple different ways in both of those games, if that's a fumble at the Minnesota goal line, let's maybe take away the pick six against Michigan, USC's 5-0. And I think they didn't get blown out by any regard, even though I did expect them to lose to both Michigan and Minnesota, and I have the FanDuel tickets to back it up.
Oh boy, I respect the Minnesota pick. I understand the Michigan pick. I thought USC had turned a corner. They're not as far along as I and many Trojan fans thought, or for some of them hoped that they would be. But let's talk about this game in more detail here, Zach. Mm-hmm. Penn State wins the game and covers a 5.5-point spread if they what?
Well, you do exactly what Minnesota and Michigan did, but better. So you talked about how Penn State likes to run the football. Well, they do, because they have Nicholas Singleton, who is most likely going to play in this game. He was saw him at practice today. Everything's trending in the right direction based on all of the intel and what we see with our actual eyes. Katron Allen, same deal. Andy Kotelnicki can run the ball 60 times. He can throw the ball 60 times if he wanted to with his former 5-star quarterback. So Penn State isn't boxed in. And that's the difference. Okay, so Michigan threw for what? Alex Orji had 32 passing yards, and they won that game
32.
Okay, so now you're seeing my point. So they were able to run the football, even though that's the only thing they could do. Same thing with, now Minnesota had a better, I guess, more effective game plan, if you will, because they were able to balance it, but they still didn't throw a lot. 19 pass attempts for Minnesota, but they had Major and Taylor. I'm a big fan of Darius Taylor out at Minnesota. I think
he's a football player.
Yes, very good football player, and he'll be playing on Sundays. Well, Penn State has that with Singleton and Allen, their own version of it, their own dynamic duo at running back. Better quarterback, Alex Orji. I don't know if he's considered a quarterback. That's why Dave Portnoy is getting involved in there. And then Minnesota, a quarterback that threw only 19 passes, and they were still able to beat USC. So Penn State isn't boxed in offensively. They can do whatever they need to do, and that's the difference. So if USC wants to push this game to a shootout, which I fully expect them to do, USC's only way of winning games is by outscoring teams, outpacing them. You have all the offensive weapons in the world, but you can't stop anybody defensively. Even though the defense has stepped up relatively against Michigan and Minnesota, but those teams aren't good offensively. Penn State is a very balanced team. They play complementary football, and that's why I have them winning 34-27.
I like the Trojans. I think this game looks and feels a lot like the Week 1 game against LSU. I don't think the Trojans' defense was bad or the problem last week. It was more about the offense, and I trust USC to right that ship a lot more than I trust them to make quick adjustments on defense. So give me a game that maybe USC sneaks in the high 30s. All of them right on, or into the low 30s, I mean, but all of them right on that 30 number. I'll go 30-27. USC wins football game. Zach Seyko, Locked On Nittany Lions.